My name is Cheryl J. Lee. I am 31 years old, and until recently, I thought ambition was something you built quietly with the person you loved, not something you had to prove to an audience that didn't live your life. Daniel and I had been together for almost 3 years. We had lived together for just over 1. Shared lease, shared furniture, shared routines that I believed meant we were building something steady and real. I work in operations for a mid-sized logistics company. It is not flashy. The hours are stable. The pay is consistent. I pay my bills early and I sleep well at night. Daniel works in marketing. He lives half online, big on networking, big on visibility, big on opinions that rarely start with him and almost always end with someone else's approval. The night everything shifted was not dramatic. There was no yelling, no raised voices, no slammed doors. That is probably why it stayed with me. We were sitting at the kitchen counter eating reheated leftovers. He had been out earlier with his friends and came home in that sharp, upbeat mood he gets after hours of being validated. I asked how his night was. He rolled his eyes and said it was productive. That was my first hint. He leaned back on the stool and looked at me the way someone does when they're about to deliver feedback at work. Calm, measured, decided. Then he told me that he and his friends had talked and come to a conclusion. According to them, I was not ambitious enough for him. Not pushing hard enough, not hungry enough, too comfortable, too safe. He said it casually, like he was telling me the weather. There was no curiosity about how it would land, no concern from my side, just a verdict that had already been agreed on by committee. I did not interrupt. I did not defend myself. I did not list promotions or savings or plans. Something settled instead of spiking. I realized in that moment that I was being evaluated by people who did not share my life, but felt entitled to judge it. I told him I understood. One sentence, calm, neutral. He looked relieved, almost smug, like he thought this was the part where I would scramble to prove something. Instead, I started thinking about leases, about timelines, about what ambition actually looks like when it isn't performative. I went to bed that night next to someone who thought he had the upper hand. I was already planning my exit. The next morning, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. That part almost hurt more than the words themselves. He asked if I wanted coffee. He talked about his schedule. He reminded me that rent was due next week, like he always did, even though I had never missed it once. I went to work and did my job. That part matters. I did not spiral. I did not call friends to vent. I noticed how calm I felt, and that calm scared me more than anger would have. By the time I got home, he had already told the story to his friends. I knew because he repeated it to me, only now with edits. Now it was not just that I was not ambitious enough. Now it was that they were worried about his future. That they loved him and wanted better for him, that he felt stuck waiting for me to level up. He said level up without irony. He made sure to mention that one friend said I was holding him back. Another said he deserved someone more driven. He watched my face as he spoke, like he was waiting for me to finally crack. I asked him what ambition looked like to him. He shrugged and said bigger moves, risk, hustle, visibility. He talked about people I had never met who posted constantly about grinding and winning. People who rented cars they could not afford and called it success. I told him I liked my life. I liked stability. I liked building quietly. He laughed and said that was exactly the problem. That night, he slept fine. I did not. Not because I was hurt, but because I was done pretending this was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. He had outsourced his respect to people who benefited from him staying dissatisfied. The next morning, I started pulling my financial documents. Lease, savings, exit options, quiet things, practical things. Daniel thought ambition meant chasing more. I was realizing that ambition sometimes looks like choosing peace and leaving people who mistake noise for value. I did not tell him I was planning to leave. I watched instead. That was the most useful part. Once you stop trying to fix things, patterns become obvious. He became sharper, less patient. Every comment had an edge now. Little digs about my job, about my routine, about how I never posted anything exciting. He started saying things like, "We're just very different people with different trajectories." Trajectory became his favorite word. His friends came over that weekend. I stayed polite, quiet, observant. They talked openly about ambition, like it was a personality trait instead of a series of choices. One of them asked me what my next big move was. Not what I wanted, not what I was working toward. Just what impressive thing I was doing next. I said I was building a solid foundation. She smirked. His friends exchanged looks. That was when it became clear. I was not a partner anymore. I was a cautionary tale they used to scare each other. That night, Daniel told me he was frustrated that I was not reacting more. He said most people would be upset being told they were not enough. He said my calm felt passive-aggressive. I told him I was just listening. In reality, I had already spoken to the leasing office. I knew my options. I knew the fees. I knew my timeline. I also knew something else. The apartment worked because I paid more. The furniture worked because I bought most of it. The quiet stability he called boring was subsidizing his freedom. He did not see ambition in consistency. He only recognized it in motion. I started moving my important things into a separate folder: documents, backups, accounts. I stopped sharing plans. I stopped offering reassurance. He noticed, but he interpreted it as withdrawal instead of detachment. That was fine. I did not need him to understand. I just needed to be clean when I left. He thought the conversation had made me smaller. It had actually made me precise. The shift happened fast once Daniel realized I was not scrambling. He started reframing everything as concern. He said he was only being honest because he cared. He said he wanted a partner who inspired him. He used words like growth and compromise, words that sound reasonable until you notice they only move in one direction. One night, he asked me what my 5-year plan was. Not in a curious way, in a test way. I told him I wanted to own a place, keep moving up steadily, maybe pivot into a director role if it made sense. I told him I wanted a calm life with margin. He frowned like I had answered wrong. He said his friends thought my plan lacked vision. That was the moment everything clicked. I was not dating Danielle anymore. I was dating his audience. Every decision had to impress people who did not live with the consequences. Every pause was laziness. Every choice for stability was fear. They called it ambition, but what they really meant was status anxiety. I stopped explaining myself after that. When he criticized my routine, I agreed neutrally. When he suggested I network more, I nodded. When he implied he might outgrow me, I said that was possible. That last one unsettled him. He expected reassurance. He got acceptance. He started picking fights to get a reaction. He accused me of checking out. He said I was emotionally unavailable. He said he felt lonely, even though most nights he was on his phone or out with friends. I listened. I did not argue. Behind the scenes, I was lining things up. I scheduled a move-out date. I separated subscriptions. I changed passwords. I confirmed which furniture was mine. I did not rush. I did not announce anything. He thought my silence meant compliance. It did not. It meant I was done negotiating my worth with people who never had any skin in the game. When someone tells you they think they can do better than you, believe them. Not because they are right, but because they are already halfway out the door. I was just making sure I exited first. The conversation he probably imagined as the big breakup did not happen yet. He was still warming up, still testing angles, still trying to provoke emotion. I was already finished. Daniel tried to force it on a Tuesday night. He came home irritated and keyed up, dropped his bag harder than necessary, and said we needed to talk. I could tell he was prepared for a long, emotional exchange where I would finally plead or promise to change. He started by saying he felt disconnected from me. He said he did not feel supported. He said he needed someone who matched his energy. Then he circled back to ambition again, like it was the core issue he could not release. He asked me directly if I was willing to change. I asked him what change looked like. He said pushing harder, chasing more, being willing to risk things. He said he did not want to look back and regret settling. Settling, that word again. I told him I was not going to audition for my own relationship. I said I liked who I was. I said if that was not enough for him, then he should make whatever decision he needed to make. He stared at me like I had broken the script. He expected negotiation. He got consent. That is when he turned mean. He said I was afraid of failure. He said I hid behind stability because I did not have what it took to be great. He said his friends were right about me, that I would always be small. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult him back. I just nodded. I told him I understood. That seemed to enrage him more than anything else. He said my calm was condescending. He said it was cruel to act so unaffected. He wanted emotion. Any emotion. Anger. Hurt. Something to prove he still mattered. I told him that conversation told me everything I needed to know. I chose the couch that night. The next morning, I emailed the leasing office and paid the termination fee. I scheduled movers. I did not tell him yet. Ambition is not loud. Sometimes it is just the willingness to walk away cleanly when someone tells you they see you as beneath them. He thought the fight was beginning. It was already over. He found out by accident. I came home early one afternoon and he was standing in the living room holding the lease paperwork I had left on the desk. The termination fee was highlighted. My handwriting, clean, intentional. He asked why it was marked. His voice was already sharp, already edged with panic disguised as irritation. I told him I was moving out. Just that. No build-up, no speech. He stared at me like I had slapped him. Then he laughed. A short, dismissive laugh. He said I was being dramatic. He said I could not just leave because we had responsibilities, shared plans, a life. I reminded him that he had already told me I was not enough for the future he wanted. I told him I was taking him seriously. That is when panic set in. Not sadness, not regret, panic. He started backtracking immediately. He said his friends' opinions did not matter that much. He said he might have been harsh. He said he was only trying to motivate me. He asked if I was really going to throw everything away over one conversation. It was not one conversation. It was clarity. He accused me of abandoning him. He said this proved I was not ambitious, because ambitious people fight for things. He said walking away was the easy option. I told him leaving a shared home quietly and cleanly was not easy. It was just final. He cried then. Real tears. He said he felt blindsided. He said he never thought I would actually leave. That part stayed with me. He thought he could downgrade me verbally without consequences, that I would stay and try harder, that I would accept the role he and his friends assigned me. I told him I would cover my portion of rent until the move-out date, and then I would be gone. No drama, no revenge, no speeches. He asked where I was going. I said somewhere peaceful. That night, he slept in the bedroom. I slept on the couch again. Boxes started showing up. Movers were scheduled. He kept saying we should talk more, that we should slow down, that he did not mean it like that. But once someone tells you they see you as beneath them, the relationship is already dead. Everything after that is just noise. He thought ambition was climbing higher. I was choosing distance instead. The last week in the apartment was tense in a quiet way. One moment he pretended nothing was happening. The next he tried to pull me back in emotionally. He used the word we a lot, like this was mutual, like this was something we were deciding together. His friends got involved almost immediately. I knew because he started repeating their talking points verbatim. He said I was being avoidant. He said I was proving them right by leaving instead of stepping up. He said real ambition meant staying and fighting. I did not engage. I kept packing. He asked if there was someone else. That surprised me. I told him no. I said this was about respect, not replacement. He did not like that answer. It gave him nothing to blame except himself. 2 days before the move, he tried one last angle. He said maybe we could take a break instead. No labels, no pressure. He said he might realize he was wrong once he had space. I told him he already had space. He had invited his friends into our relationship and let them speak for him. I told him I was not interested in being paused while he crowdsourced my value. He got angry again. He said I was cold. He said I was punishing him. He said I would regret this when I realized how rare he was. It sounded rehearsed. The movers came on a Friday morning. He stood in the doorway watching them take the couch, the desk I worked at, the kitchen table where he told me I was not ambitious enough. He asked if I was really never coming back. I told him no. Calm, final. When I handed him the keys, he said I was making a mistake, that walking away was not ambition, that it was fear disguised as pride. I told him ambition is choosing a life where you are not constantly being evaluated by people who do not live it. Then I left. The silence in the car afterward was the loudest relief I had felt in years. There was no music, no shaking hands, just space. The first few days after moving out felt unreal in a very quiet way. No messages, no notifications, no commentary from people who had opinions about my life without living it. I stayed with a friend temporarily. An air mattress, thin walls, absolute peace. Daniel broke the silence on day 4. It started carefully. A long message about how he had been thinking a lot, how he missed our routines, how the apartment felt empty. Then it pivoted. He said his friends thought I had overreacted. That walking away proved I was insecure. That ambition would have been staying and proving them wrong. I did not respond immediately. That bothered him more than anything else. When I did reply, I kept it simple. I told him I was not interested in defending myself to his friends. I told him I believed him when he said he wanted something different. I said I was respecting that. He asked if we could meet and talk it through like adults. I said no. The tone shifted fast. He accused me of being spiteful. He said I was abandoning him when things got hard. He said I was punishing him for being honest. He said relationships require resilience. He still did not understand that nothing about this felt like a fight to me. What finally landed was when I told him I did not feel safe being vulnerable with someone who outsourced my worth to a group chat. I told him ambition to me meant choosing environments where I was respected without needing to perform. He did not reply for a full day. When he did, it was short. He said he never thought I would actually leave. He said he thought I would try harder. That sentence told me everything. I blocked his number that night, not out of anger, out of clarity. For the first time in a long while, I was not being measured, not being compared, not being nudged to become louder or flashier or more acceptable to people who did not matter. I was just living. A few weeks later, the fallout reached me through other people. Friends who stayed neutral checked in carefully. I heard the updated version of the story he was telling. In it, I had blindsided him. I had refused to grow. I had walked away instead of fighting for love. I did not correct anyone. You do not need to control the narrative when your life improves without explanation. I signed a short-term lease on a small place closer to work. Nothing impressive. Clean, quiet, mine. I bought only what I needed. A desk, a bed, a chair facing a window. My expenses dropped, my sleep improved, my focus sharpened. Daniel tried reaching out again, this time by email. He said he missed me. He said he had been reflecting. He said maybe he let other voices get too loud. He asked if I was open to starting fresh without outside influence. I read it once and closed it. There was a line that gave him away. He said he finally understood how driven I actually was, and that it was attractive. It was still conditional. I realized if I went back, he would never respect the decision to leave. He would see it as a tactic, a move, something to negotiate against next time. I did not reply. Over time, the noise faded. His friends stopped circling. My name stopped coming up. The quiet stayed. I invested energy into things that compounded instead of drained. Work, health, a few close friendships that did not feel like auditions. Ambition stopped being something I needed to prove. It became something I lived. Months later, I ran into him at a grocery store near the old apartment. He looked surprised. I looked fine. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger ever had. We exchanged polite hellos. He asked how I was. I said good, because I was. He said he had learned a lot. Said he did not realize how much influence his friends had. Said he hoped I was not still upset. I told him I was not upset. I was finished. That was the ending. If there is any lesson buried here, it is this. When someone tells you that you are not enough based on a group opinion you did not consent to, listen carefully. Not because they are right, but because they are telling you how they see you. Ambition is not proving yourself to people who already decided you are lacking. Sometimes ambition is walking away early instead of shrinking slowly. I did not leave to teach him a lesson. I left because staying would have taught me the wrong one.